Hello. This is the Bible in Fewer Words. We are Carol and Steve Wells. This is episode 278. Romans, chapters 1 through 6. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Carol.
A new book.
Yes, it is. The first of 13 letters that are attributed to Paul.
But what do we really think? Do we think he wrote them all?
No, most scholars think he wrote 7. Mm-hmm. There are 7 that are called the undisputed letters of Paul.
I'll dispute this one.
Well, undisputed because everybody kind of agrees. These are probably written by Paul. And then the other 6 are argued about.
Okay, so the dispute is about who wrote them and not about what's in them, because I have peeked at what's in this one and it makes me a little angry.
Yeah.
Okay. Should we just introduce our readers to it?
Yes, I think so. I should say just a little more about Romans and the epistles in general. They're not presented chronologically. So Romans is the first letter of Paul in the Bible, but it wasn't the first letter that he wrote.
It's the last one he wrote?
It is, actually.
Oh.
It is one of the letters that people think was written by Paul.
So Paul's and last.
It's Paul's, it's last, and it's the longest. This is a letter to the Christians in Rome. But it isn't a church that he founded. So there may have been no real founder of the Church of Rome, whereas Paul is considered to be the founder of the church in Corinth. The letters to the Corinthians are Paul's letters to those churches that he founded. That's not the case in the book of Romans. So in this letter, he's writing to them saying, hey, I'd like to come visit you.
Oh.
So he's really writing them and asking him to support his travel to Rome.
Okay.
And support him while he's there.
All right. Well, let's get started. Chapter 1. This is a letter from Paul about Jesus, the Son of God, who is a descendant of David according to the flesh, to everyone in Rome. All right, there's a lot of things in there that I don't think are right. But we can't go through every sentence. This long letter is going to be even longer.
Yeah, the thing that strikes me the most about that is according to the flesh. So he's implying here that Jesus is a descendant of David according to the flesh.
There's that whole birth thing.
Yeah, and supposedly his mom was a virgin. Mm-hmm. And so he's not a descendant of David.
Did Paul not believe that?
Well, Paul had never read the Gospel of Luke or the Gospel of Matthew, where they have the genealogy of Joseph, really.
Yeah.
Jesus' father, except for he wasn't his father because, the virgin birth and all that.
Yes.
So I have no idea, but apparently Paul thought that Jesus was a man. He may have been more than a man, but he was a man, and he was a descendant of David. So he had a father then, apparently.
Yeah.
But anyway, he's writing it to everyone in Rome.
Okay.
I'm asking for your assistance so I can come to visit you. I'm ready to preach the gospel to you in Rome.
So this is a fundraising letter.
Yeah, I think so. Or at least it's saying, hey, I'm going to be there. I need a place to stay.
Yeah.
And
a little gas on the way would be good, too.
Yeah.
The gospel of Christ saves everyone who believes in it. First the Jews, then the Greeks. Because it's written, just people live by faith. And that's just people, not just people.
Yeah. The wrath of God is toward all ungodliness and unrighteousness. God has made his existence known by the things he's created. So those who don't believe in him have no excuse.
I could tell right off, Steve, this is going to be kind of a book that makes me angry and frustrated.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to just set that aside now.
You have no excuse.
No. This is verse 21. They knew God, but didn't glorify or thank him. Their thoughts were useless, and their foolish hearts were darkened.
They thought they were wise, but they became fools. They made images of people, birds, beasts, and creeping things.
So God let them become unclean by following their own hearts. They cared more for creatures than the Creator.
So God let them follow their own desires. Their women changed their natural use into something unnatural.
And the men, leaving the natural use of the woman, lusted for one another, and getting the punishment they deserved. All right, that's saying something very specific here. Do we know what he's talking about here, Steve?
I think so. I think it's pretty clear what Paul thinks the natural use of a woman is. And men turned from that natural use and started to lust for each other. So I think we know what he's talking about, right?
I just want to say it.
Go ahead.
So the only use of a woman, or the natural use of a woman, is for a man to use her to have sex.
I think so. That's what he's talking about. And that women stopped letting that happen, and they started to do stuff that was totally unnatural. And men started lusting after each other. So, yeah, he's talking about homosexuality. At least that's the way it seems to me, but it is disputed. What is he talking about here? Some people say, well, maybe it isn't homosexuality, but it sounds like homosexuality to me.
And it's like the first thing he goes to.
Yeah, but he's going to go on here. There's other stuff.
Oh, lovely.
So God gave them up to their reprobate minds. They became filled with fornication, wickedness, maliciousness, envy, murder, whisperers, backbiters, God-haters, despiteful, proud, inventors of evil things, disobedient children.
Let's keep going to get some more of this lovely descriptive language.
Well, he also says that they're without understanding, natural affection, and they're unmerciful.
People who do things like that should be killed, as should anyone who takes pleasure in their bad behavior. Okay, so we know what Paul thinks now.
Well, yeah. But he's not done yet.
No.
That's chapter 1. So chapter 2.
Who are you to judge other people? When you condemn others, you condemn yourself, because you do the same things they do.
Paul has just spent chapter 1, right, condemning people. Mm-hmm. But he says don't do that.
Yeah. I shouldn't ought to have done that. That's probably what he's thinking.
Do you think you can escape the judgment of God? God will judge everyone according to their deeds.
Really? I thought Paul didn't believe that.
Yeah, he's very inconsistent on this. Sometimes he says that it doesn't matter what you do, that we're all evil and you all do evil things. But even if you do good things, which no one does, you're going to hell unless you get saved. So, there's some inconsistency there, but I think we just have to work through it.
Yeah. Verse 11. God has no respect for anyone. Those who obey the law will be justified. God will judge your secrets by Jesus Christ according to my gospel.
And then he says something kind of nice. Whatever you tell others to do, you should do yourself. Thank
you, Paul. If you are circumcised and you break the law, your circumcision will be undone. Well, now, how does that happen, Steve? Is it like Pinocchio? His nose going back and forth.
Yeah, I think the foreskin, If you're circumcised and you break the law, then your foreskin grows back.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you're uncircumcised and you keep the law, then you're counted as circumcised, as though you were circumcised.
And never had been circumcised.
Which would mean that...
That's the best way to have it done,
you're uncircumcised. So it's just like you're circumcised. So God ignores your foreskin, I guess.
I guess so.
Yeah.
God hates foreskin.
He does.
All right, chapter 3. Is God evil for taking vengeance? In parentheses, I speak as a man. God forbid. How else would God judge the world? So this is like Paul talking to himself?
He's making an argument here. He's saying, I speak as a man. I think he's saying, I shouldn't even say such a thing. How could I even say that?
That God is evil for taking vengeance.
Right. Mm-hmm. Which I would answer, yes. But then he goes on to say, no, that God has to judge the world. And then he says, if my lie advances God's truth, then why am I called a sinner?
Oh my gosh, are they saying people can lie willy-nilly and it doesn't matter?
Well, I don't think so. I think he's saying you can lie if it's furthering God's truth.
Oh.
So if it helps people to believe
in God
and what you're telling them about God, if you lie,
that's
it's okay. Yeah. You're not a sinner. Yeah.
Okay. Verse 8. I'm not saying, as some slanderously say I am. That's Paul.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm in that camp of the people who slanderously say he is.
Yes, right.
Let's do evil, so good may come from it. Their damnation is just. So Paul's saying, I'm not saying let's do evil so good can come from it.
Except for he kind of is. He's saying,
Yes.
you can lie.
Yes.
Or he can lie. Yeah.
Yes, he just said a lie there.
There has never been a righteous person. No one understands anything. No one seeks God. Everyone has gone astray. No one ever does anything good.
He needs to take his antidepressant medication here. Everyone lies, curses, murders, destroys, causes misery, and avoids peace.
Obeying God's laws does not make a person acceptable to God.
That's a funny line for him.
Well, kind of. It's kind of typical Paul.
Okay, but he does go back and forth.
He does.
Okay. Everyone has sinned and is beneath God's glory.
We are all justified by faith, not by obeying God's laws. So does our faith destroy God's laws? No, we still must obey them.
What kind of a...
Except for a lot of times he says we don't, and he'll be saying that in his epistles all the time. You know, like you don't have to follow the laws about circumcision, or you don't have to follow the laws about the dietary laws, or the sacrificial laws. Yeah.
Chapter 4. But what about Abraham? If he was justified by his works, then he would deserve glory, not God. So not God would deserve his glory.
So I think maybe we want to read that again, because I think maybe you didn't understand it when you read it. So he's saying if he was justified by works, then he would deserve the glory, not God.
Oh, Abraham would think that.
Or and other people would too, right? So so Abraham was justified not by his works. That's what he's saying. If he was justified by his works, then he'd get the glory, not God. He'd deserve the glory, not God. So we can't have that.
Can't have that. What a person does doesn't matter to God. Only faith makes a person righteous. God judges people without considering their actions.
God's promise to Abraham wasn't made to him for following God's law. It was made because of Abraham's faith. And if we had time, we would talk about what he's really talking about here. We don't. Abraham didn't do that many things, right? But the thing that really stands out in his life, really, was his willingness to
kill his son.
Yeah, and that's his great faith, and that's also his great work. You know, he just marched up the hill doing exactly what God told him to do.
Yeah.
So he's obedient, and he had faith. But it's his faith, according to Paul. His faith that God
saved him.
Would what? I don't know. I'm not sure what faith.
Faith that God wouldn't make him kill his son.
Or that he would be okay with it if he did, because he was telling him to.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, and he was going to do it.
Yes, it was. It seems like about the worst example you could possibly find to glorify faith. But it's also just a horrible act. It's the worst act a father could possibly do.
Yeah.
Okay, chapter 5. We are justified by faith. Since we are justified by his blood, we'll be saved from his wrath. We are reconciled to God by the death of his Son.
So the whole idea that God has wrath just makes me sick a little bit.
Right. And that wrath could be satisfied by
somebody
killing
dying.
Some supposedly innocent person.
Yeah.
How does that help anything?
It doesn't, in my mind.
Yeah.
Sin entered the world through one man, and death by sin. So death passed to everyone.
Everyone died from Adam to Moses, even those who didn't sin. Everyone is condemned because of the act of one man.
Everyone became a sinner when one man disobeyed. Then everyone becomes righteous when one man obeys. Okay, that is crazy. I had a headmaster one time who treated us that way. Something went wrong, you're all going to be punished until that one person, fesses up.
Yeah.
And usually the one person did not fess up.
But when one person obeyed, it probably didn't make everybody okay either.
No. We all had to obey individually.
Yeah. God created the law so that there'd be lots of offenses. But when there's lots of sin, there's lots of grace. So it all works out.
Okay, chapter 6. Okay, then, should we sin a lot so there'll be lots of grace?
No, since we're dead to sin, how can we live in it? We were buried with Jesus in baptism. We will be raised in his resurrection.
You no longer need to follow the law because now you're under grace. The wages of sin is death. All right, a lot of that is just crazy talk, Steve. I I just can't. This is too much for my little brain to
Well,
just
Romans
say.
is a very famous book. It's one of the favorite books of the Reformers, Luther and Calvin in the Protestant Reformation. This is where the idea of faith alone came from.
Yeah.
And that was the rallying cry of the Reformation. So it works in the Catholic Church. You have to both believe and you have to act. You have to live a good life. If you don't, then you have to confess your sins and whatnot. To the Protestant Reformers, they looked at Romans, and we're all evil through and through. Everything we do from the time we're born until the day we die is evil. And so the only way that God can accept us is for us to believe in Jesus' death and resurrection. And because God punished him for us,
then we're good.
We're good. And then we go to heaven.
If we believe.
And we'll all live happily in heaven, although I guess we're all just disgusting creatures.
Yes.
Although maybe, I think what God does is he cloaks us with Jesus' perfection. You know, it put it like a robe on, a white robe on us.
Yeah.
And it covers all of our ugly, sinful nature so that God doesn't have to see it.
When we go up there to join him.
Yeah, and then he's okay with us, and we can be up in heaven. I think that's the way it works.
Well, thanks for clearing that up for me. I was getting a little distraught there.
Yeah, Romans is an important book. Some say that Romans is the most important book in the Bible. At least the most important book in the New Testament. Because it really establishes how we're saved. That we're totally corrupt, and we're saved by faith alone.
By faith alone.
Yeah.
I'm in trouble.
Yes, you are.
Okay, well, thanks, Steve. And listeners, this is a new book.
Yeah.
We have hope.
Only 2 more episodes for
Romans.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.